Good evening and welcome to Enemy Within on peoplesinternetradio.com. It's Tuesday, the 8th of December, 2015. Christmas is approaching fast. Tonight we've got a massive lineup with Mickey Summers and Mark Fragz Smith, but unfortunately I've been out with Mickey all day. The man's a human dynamo, he's worn me out already. But unfortunately Fragz is not very well today, so you're going to have to put up with me. I'm going to be sitting in for Fragz, but I believe Mickey's on the line. Are you there, Mickey?
Yeah, we've had fun in Nottingham once again, but actually brought up to date by Mandy this afternoon when you interviewed her. So before we bring Kellie Cottam in, I think maybe you can give us an insight as to what's on in Nottingham yesterday.
Well, I believe you had a meeting with Chris Eyre and Paddy Tipping, didn't you?
Well, we had a confrontation at first.
Uh-huh.
We shut their meeting down like we're famous for. They thought they were going to sneak out the building, but they got ambushed. And basically, we rode up to account. But my view now is Paddy Tipping is not only a paedophile protector, he's the gatekeeper to the paedophiles and the councils.
Just a second, Mickey. I don't know if you can hear me, Kelly, but we've got a lot of rustling in the background there. If you could possibly...
I'm trying to move into a better place because I'm actually in a squat.
Okay. If you could possibly mute your mic till we drag you in, that would be a big help.
Have you got it now?
Yeah, that sounds a lot better, darling.
Brilliant. Okay, I was going to go outside, so just in case people start walking around.
Okay, we're live on the air anyway. Mickey, sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, we thought we were going to have them sneaking out the back door because they had already done a runner. But we confronted Chris Eyre and Paddy Tipping. Paddy Tipping now, he's their number one gatekeeper. He's the gatekeeper to the paedophiles, and he's also the gatekeeper to the council. He's the one, in my estimation, that's played us all along. Told us that we were going to get an inquiry that was postponed in the summer when they started their underground little review, another cover-up. More's getting revealed. It's just like peeling the layers of the onion. We're loving every minute of it. So, Mr. Tipping, if you're listening, fuck you. We'll be seeing you in the new year.
Very good, Mickey. Yeah, it was certainly interesting and very enjoyable to spend the day with you, mate. It was lovely to meet Miss Marple, aka Mandy. If you're listening, hi Mandy, and lovely sandwiches, thank you. So what's the plan for tonight then? I believe we've got Kelly who's going to come on and talk to us about forced adoption.
Yes, she is. As we started the stuff around so-called historic child abuse, we learned that the modern day child abuse, because they don't really get the opportunities to abuse kids as much as they did back in the day in the children's homes, because there's more staff around than there is kids in a lot of them. So what they're doing now, they're targeting children. The biggest thing that I found was people that have been in care are, according to their projections, more likely to actually go on and abuse children. So they target people like that, but they target all kinds of families. And I think, really and truthfully, the best person that we have has got to be Kelly, because she's done all her homework on it. And maybe at this time we can bring Kelly in.
Sure.
Well, my homework's going a little bit further, actually. I don't know, those who know me, I've been campaigning against forced adoption since July 2013, which was when two of my own children were taken for forced adoption. They were only adopted about 8 months ago, though. But what I've been trying to do is literally really understand the system and why it's sort of going so wrong. So we've had an EU inquiry, we're in the United Nations, we're in Parliament, we're in the media. Literally for the last sort of 2 years, there's just been a mass amount of people sort of coming out and speaking about their children sort of being taken. But what I'm doing at the moment is I'm actually out on the streets. I've been to visit loads of parents who sort of live in homes and different sort of circumstances, but now I'm coming down to sort of understand those who are living in squats, those who are living out on the streets, and how these different words come about, really. And I've been spending some time with a lot of people down here, and what you actually find is most of the people, apologise if there's lots of noise coming backwards around, bless man, bless brother. All right, it's upstairs. I'm live on radio, mate. So, a lot of them actually are people who've been forced adopted, or they were in foster care. The amount of people down here who've been through abuse, most of it within the state. Just so people know, I'm actually in a hospital, so I've got a lot of people sort of walking past me and things like that. So yeah, but I haven't got the stats to the side of me at the moment because it's online. But literally about every 20 minutes a child is taken, and it's absolutely astronomical. But what I started looking at was the gap in the system that was going on, because you can talk about corruption and you can talk about the paedophile circle in government and satanic rituals, and obviously the amount of children is like nearly 204 average children a year going missing once they've been removed from foster care. But you could break that down to parents who've taken their children who've ran away. But these are babies, so babies are going missing. And it's unexplainable. It's been in the papers by the local authority themselves showing those statistics, so they're admitting it to themselves. So we can talk about that side, but we can also talk about the failure within the care system as a whole. And, the majority of parents, and I was talking to someone today, and I said to her, I'm doing this radio show today, you're currently facing a forced adoption yourself, you've had children removed, what would you say? And she said, I would trust strangers more to help me out than turn to social services. And one thing I've always said is when people need help, they can go to Super Nanny, they can go on Jerry McKyle, and they come out the other side with the help that they need, whether that be counselling for, some trauma that they've had as a child, whether they're using drugs, alcohol, whether there's been domestic violence, whether there actually have been issues where there would be the right to come in and intervene with a family. They get the help that they need. Super Nanny, you can be going, I want to kill my kids. You could physically be holding them in a room, dragging them out of the room, and Super Nanny will sit down and go through processes with you and help you change. But when you go to social services, you don't. Now, this will be the first time it's ever been announced, major public, but I'm actually pregnant. And the chances are that this, it is congratulations, but also it's not. And this is what people don't understand. Once you're pregnant, it's like jumping out of an aeroplane. You're going to hit the bottom whether you like it or not. And you're going to land safely, or it's going to be an absolute crash. Now, with me being pregnant now, ultimately, I face, potentially as there was at Watford Hospital, and I'm sure because it would be me, there'll be a lot more than 20. There was 20 police officers at Watford Hospital to remove a newborn baby from a mother who had stitches with a baby who was potentially looking at needing some form of investigation into its own health. And they literally, and this is the whole sickness about it, the moment that they can't do anything until the baby's born, and the birth certificate, as much as people go on about the birth certificate, babies are removed without birth certificates and they get them registered. It doesn't make any difference. Now, they'll then have you go down to the court. So they're asking both parents to basically leave the baby at the hospital while they go down to the courts. And with Sam and Bupesh, who were the Watford family, by the time they come back to the hospital, the police had barricaded them out of the hospital. They weren't allowed to go back into the hospital, not even to collect their things. And 20 police officers pretty much armed them. And then the baby was removed into foster care that very same day. And it's the same as this mother I've met today. Unfortunately, she had been raped, she'd conceived a child, and she was only 19. And straight away, within 3 hours of that baby being born, she literally got to see her baby, and then it was taken. Now, most children are being taken under 5 years old, and this is because it's about children who are adoptable. Now, each one child, and what people need to realise is there's so many different factors to this, but once a child is removed, whether that's foster care or for adoption, but like I say, if they're under 5, they're going to be going for adoption, that child is pretty much paying the hourly rate of the judge, or maybe 3 judges, the barrister for the social services, for CAF, for yourself, for the partner of the child. Then it's paying for the solicitors of those same 4 teams. Then it's paying for the admins and the clerks, the social worker, the CAF officer, the senior social worker, the support worker, the foster carers. Then the schools are getting extra budgets or nurseries to fund these children. Counsellors, psychologists, psychological assessments, medication, because most people are put onto medication once this happens. And all that child is doing is pretty much employing every single person. It's an employment racket. It's basically making money from children. But when you're dealing with people who've come in and asked for help, one of the biggest problems now, and this is since Baby P, is it just gets straight thrown into the courts. And it's a 26-week court process. And during that time, now it's either they're going to remove the child or they have removed the child. The majority of the times they're looking at it happening. So you've got a parent who is ultimately, and the only way I can describe it is a lioness mother. Now, we live in a country right now. Now, don't forget, today there's been an announcement that the president of Zimbabwe has come to England and his grandchild has been detained by social services. Now, if that had happened over in their country, they'd cut your throats. You wouldn't step anywhere near someone as a threat to their child. They would literally cut your throats. Yeah. We live in a world where they are educating us. If someone comes over and bombs your country, you've got to go over and drop a load of bombs on theirs and kill even more people. We're pretty much being run by psychopaths. But if you're a mother or a father and social services are coming in, there's nothing you can do. You're absolutely powerless. So one of the biggest things that they're using to take children is an emotional attachment, is a bond. If you go into any Timpson shop, which is a key cutting shop around the UK, you will find a book. And they basically promote the Adoption UK, and they have this attachment disorder book and what attachment disorders do to people. But this is what they're creating. Now, I'm down here with the homeless, and the majority of the people down here, whether they're on drugs or not, are emotionally broken. Mm-hmm. They've either been put through the foster care system, they've been through 5, 6, 7 different foster care families, they've gone to their adopters. Majority of adoption placements break down. Majority. They either end up back in care or they leave their family and they go off and find their family. They either face problems with meeting their family or they, it's quite a successful way. We've been reuniting families pretty much all week down here with people where I've been finding people who haven't yet met their parents, and luckily we've had their connections on Facebook, so we've been able to reunite people down here as well. But you're talking about real trauma. You're talking about grief, but you're talking about grief where you don't get to bury your children. You don't get to grieve them. You don't even know where they are. And in today's society, where obviously the historic paedophilia circle has been exposed, we know it's current, parents are literally going onto Google to look for help. And I have called Sabine and Belinda up for this. It is commonly known that I said one of the biggest challenges is the steps for how to get your children back are missed. And you're in a place of fear immediately. I mean, you're literally a caged lion having your eyes prodded out and you're not allowed to say anything to them. And it's a very, very abusive sort of process that you go through as well. I mean, the removals are absolutely horrendous. We've got videos of 13-year-old boys with police officers with their knees in their back, cuffing children that don't want to leave. We've got videos of 2-year-olds that are grabbing on like koala bears to their parents. Have they been wrenched away? I was having to put my knee into my son to hold him into the car seat because he wanted to come with me. And they put you through sort of like supervised contact and It's like being in a zoo. It's not always appropriate for the types of toys and facilities they have around you. They mess around with your contact. And you've got children. You've got literally children out of university who've studied social services, who are dealing, supporting these families who've got no concept or understanding of life or of parenting. Any good social worker tends to go on leave, and just as you're getting to meeting someone's away, you get a different legal person each time. There's no legal aid to help you take accountability against them. So the whole cycle is everything from having paedophilia circles in government who, if people want to really think about it, where do they get these children from? They get them from foster care. We know that. And then also the other side of it, and I'm not anti-gay in any shape, way or form. My brother's gay, my cousin's gay. But because of gay legalization of marriage and adoption, then the adoption drive is pretty much creating children for adoption. It's how do we get this child settled? And I will say there does need to be permanency. Of course they do. You don't want children going around foster care for parents who don't want their children, and that does happen. There are people who genuinely just don't want their children. Mm-hmm. There are people who want their children adopted. There are people who abuse their children, unfortunately. But the majority of the time, there is just people who need help. It might be as simple as a single mother who just needs to have a bath, who just wants to work or, needs some form of normal support. Somebody who's got a physical condition and they may need to go into hospital and have foster carers supporting them. But the system doesn't work that way. It's so underfunded. The police is underfunded, and everything uses generic wording. I went into a court case the other day where a guy had actually hit his partner. It was one push to the chest. So he goes into court and they read out battery. Now, battery paints a very, very, very different picture. Yeah. And it was the same with mine. They used the word homelessness, yet I was living in the Ramada Hotel during the school holidays. That wasn't homelessness. Domestic violence, it paints a different picture. Attachment disorder, even using the word illicit drugs, and you could be talking about someone who is a mum pretty much through the week, or a dad, and maybe at the weekend is a bit of a DJ, do you know what I mean? But that doesn't mean that they are doing it around the children. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying there are different stories and different lifestyles that when you go into the courts, every single piece of paperwork that I've read all pretty much reads the same. It's cut and paste. Most of it comes through psychological assessments. Within that 26-week court process that you go through, they literally gather if you've got a foster care file, you are screwed, because psychology says if you were abused, therefore you shall abuse. Now, that's not correct, and I've been petitioning that for nearly 13 years. Now, within the psychological assessment, they'll access your police records, they'll access foster care records, they'll access, whether you've been with social services before, and they might meet you. Not all the time do the psychologists meet you, but the majority of the time they will, but all they're doing is going over a genealogy. They're not getting positives and negatives, they're just looking for negatives. It's the same with the word disability. If we're focused on what people can't do all the time, we're never enabling them to do what they can do. And it's exactly the same with this system. All they're doing is they've got a child protection order. So all they're doing is social services, and people need to understand, social services do not have the power to remove children. They are just witnesses, information gatherers. The police don't have the power to remove children. They are just investigators, and they can carry out the actions of orders given by the courts. So all these people are doing is bringing forth evidence which in their way is they're looking for negatives. They'll go through your home, they'll open your cupboards, they'll look at your living conditions, but all of these things have one tick box sentence that they're looking for. So when they write these reports up, which aren't even written by them, it's handed over to somebody else to write up. It's pretty much all the same sort of stuff that they're looking for, but they're not looking for positives. So the moment you come through that 26-week court process, all of the money and all of the funding is in the assessing you, not the treating you. So they'll say you may need 2 years dialective therapy, but oh well, that can't be done in the time of this court case, so therefore we're going for adoption order. And, you know, this whole system is just chaotic, and during that time, they're only just starting to recognise that children who... You're still there? Children who have been adopted are dealing with emotional trauma, and then the cycle begins again. You've got a child who's got emotional trauma that people can't connect to, people can't deal with, people don't know how to deal with. They're acting out, probably maybe getting into delinquent behaviour, going to prison, juvenile, getting into prostitution, many different things. Against the family courts as a whole, James Mumby, he's the president of the family division, and we've been really pushing him for the last sort of 3 years. And they just had the 9th annual council meeting, and I was hoping that Terence might flit on at some point, and because he went into the meeting. I'm barred from all of these places. It's quite funny. They don't let me in. So they had what was basically the main 9th council family meeting, and this is about the abolishment of forced adoption. Now, I'm not saying that forced adoption shouldn't happen. We are the only country that has forced adoption. But there are some people you've got to get in and take them children. But what I always say to some people is, if a parent has caused significant harm to a child, therefore they should be in the criminal court facing criminal charges, and therefore would be in prison and would come out rehabilitated if that's how the system works so well. So even adoption isn't always the right answer. You can help out with special guardianships, things like that. But this isn't the way it's working. People are going to prison, and one of the horrible things is, and people will know, my partner is currently on remand. We both had police intervention the other day, and he was held for not having an address, so he's on remand. But people coming out of the prison to find their children have been adopted while they've been in. And you know, at the end of the day, we're dealing with a threshold. But you can't come in, and even James Mumby himself is saying it is social engineering. You can't come down to certain types of families and predict that because somebody lives in council, because somebody commits crimes, because somebody's mum may be a prostitute, or they're using some form of drugs, you can't actually turn around and say that this person is not going to raise a healthy, functional child. And you can't even really sort of say, well, hang on, this is our right to come in, intervene in this family and take children. I'm not saying children should be beaten, but it does happen. But not always is coming in and removing them and separating the family the right thing to do. Sometimes you've got to come in and work with these families, and this is where judgment comes in. All they're doing is judging, but different people will judge different standards. People say to me, Kelly, what the hell are you doing down on the streets? You know, I'm in squats, I'm down at the bear pit, you know, I'm with people who smoke spice, I'm with people who are using crack pipes and things like that. But I'm trying to get a genuine understanding of the people behind the problem where they're removing children in the first place, homelessness, even sexual abuse, even people who have actually abused people. Because you can't just go in with a problem and go, bang, this is the problem. You've got to show where it works. You've got to be neutral. And it has every right, who's a mother who's had a child, who's a mother who's also now facing a potential removal of another child. I have every right to be angry, but that anger doesn't get us anywhere. And we're talking about an epidemic of a massive problem that is not just in the UK, it's in the Commonwealth, it's worldwide, it's going on practically everywhere at the moment. And now even worse, we've got immigrants coming in who are having children removed immediately. It is clogging up our foster care system. So we're actually missing genuine cases of abuse, but also now people who are, needing help are no longer going to get that help. We are talking about a massive crash in our system with the changeovers of universal credit, more people losing their homes. And it's time that we really do come out about this, but in such a constructive way where we're bringing solutions. I mean, I've even said I'm happy to work with paedophilia now who want to help, because the more people who do that I can change, the more children I can prevent from ever having to go through it. Yes, they probably want to smash them in the face and kill them, but that's not the answer at the end of the day. We're talking about a world that we all live in, where there's nothing wrong with the world, it's the people in it. And we are in a spiritual war. There is other things going on. People can change. But this is a system when everybody is judged by their past. And, you know, foster care children who've been abused within the damn care system should not be having their children taken because psychology says, therefore you can't protect your child from sexual abuse. It's all labels. It's all labels, whether they're giving you borderline personality, narcissistic behaviour, grandeur. All of this stuff is all labels designed. I could come across with something and go, hey, I've studied forced adoption for so long, I'm going to call it disenfranchised grief. I'm going to call it Cottam syndrome. So all of a sudden everybody gets diagnosed with Cottam syndrome because I say that's sort of what it is. But it should be about the treatment. Now, so many of these families, there is perjury, there is malfeasance in public office, I've so many different law words that I've learned over the last sort of couple of years. But what they're doing ultimately is state kidnapping. What they're doing, and I said this when Dean was arrested, I said to the police officer, I said, so if I came over to you and made an allegation against you, threw you in the back of my van, drove you down to a squat, threw you into one of those rooms, questioned you and left you there while you wait for a court process that ultimately you're dealing with 30, 40 other people, I said I would get down to kidnapping. But because you stand under the Queen's authority, therefore you have the permission to come into people's houses and take their children. And it's no different than what was happening in the Nazi times. You've got police, people turning up to people's homes, dragging children out of homes, taking children from school, taking children from hospitals, newborn babies from the breast. And it's happening in such a way that parents can't even tell people what's going on. Now, laws are changing. I've got draconian gags on me. People know I've been taken for a 2-year committal to prison. I told them to go whistle. I'm still out here, still campaigning, still talking about my case. They don't come after me. They sent me a letter to say it's not in the public funding interest. But most parents who've had their children taken are laying in bed. They're committing suicide. They're depressed. I've had a message off a mother today who said she can't take anymore. And, what is going on now is to a level that it's so barbaric that people can't even imagine what it must like to have. I've just got a load of people coming through the door. What it must be like to know that you're going to have a child taken. I mean, I've been down with a homeless now for nearly a year. And I use my car as an example because the police wanted to remove my car from Trafalgar Square. And I said, could you imagine a community coming around my car to prevent the police from removing them? And this is what we need now. Once you go into the court process, and I can talk about legal stuff, but, parents need to really understand this stuff. All of your family and friends need to become parties to proceedings. Now, people don't know to do this. So you've got you as an individual in court, and the whole process is, very barbaric. You don't know what you're involved in. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what's going on. I'm on live radio, just warning you.
Kelly, while you on that subject, can I just come in with something I've learned today, which I find quite shocking. When I was talking to one of Mickey's contacts, Mandy, today, she was telling me how someone she knows works in a maternity ward, and she said that they've actually got social workers on the maternity wards now watching to see if anyone is kind of not really bonding with their child, perhaps not having enough contact, not picking them up, that sort of thing. And if they think they possibly see an opportunity, they're straight in there and trying to forcibly adopt the kids.
They actually have at all maternity sites child protection maternity offices anyway. They're there permanently. But even parents who are diagnosed with clinical postnatal depression are having children removed for forced adoption. But again, that is something that is treatable. But that's what I'm saying. They're coming in and they come from a problem scale that what they're not doing is moving to the solution. And that's because it's only one half of the court system. One of the biggest things is the court system should be a balance of probabilities. It should be negatives versus, positives. No positives are ever sort of brought in. But midwives out there are getting absolutely heartbroken with what's going on. I mean, one of the things that was horrendous when I was at Sam's birth was that they left her with her waters broken for 4 days. She was treated as if she was this worst person in the world, because the concept of having a child removed is you must have done something serious wrong. People think that removing a child is actually really difficult to do. Yeah. Where actually it's not. It can take your next door neighbour to make a phone call. It can take for somebody at school to say there's a bruise. Now, ultimately, social services did used to come in and assess things better, but now they are most social workers have got like 50 cases. I was at court the other day where the barrister said that she's got 20 other cases to deal with that day. The paperwork is done so quickly because of Baby T. Nobody wants to get it wrong, and this is why everything is thrown into the judge's arena. But the moment that information is wrong, there's obviously complaints procedures, you can go through things like that. But those procedures take just as long as the court case itself, and then the independent reviewing officer is not allowed into the actual court case. So therefore, while your court case is going on, you've already got everything moving forwards and you're already at the end of it, and then they go case closed, and there's no point actually dealing with the complaints that have gone on. And this is half of the massive problem that's going on. But, I had it the other day with a police officer where I kept making them rewrite their sentences. I'm going, no, you're writing shorthand, you're painting a very different picture. But to give birth to a child, to bring a child into the world is meant to be one of the most magical experiences. But they're going to have me now for this, because even now I know there's a baby growing in my stomach. I don't particularly connect, and nor have I accepted that this baby is there. And ultimately, even as this progresses, I have to deal with the fact that one, it could be taken, or one, it may not. So you want to have as much time with it as possible, but also not bond with it.
Yeah.
And they do this, even in the removal, they break down the bonding with the child so quickly as well. And it's done in so many different ways. NLP is massive now within adoption. And what they actually do is when the child's actually removed, there's certain things that they'll say to the child, like they'll say, Mummy and Daddy can't look after you, or Mummy and Daddy can't keep you safe. You say that to a child, you're putting that child on the back thinking, well, my Mummy and Daddy can't keep me safe. They're not going to not believe you. No. They may contest it, but, even just little silly things, like even in contact, you can lose contact for saying I love you. You can lose contact for telling them that you're trying to get them home. Contact is not always the most amazing experiences. I have seen another side of it. In the last 2 years, we've seen more and more people getting their children back. But that's because, one, they're calming down. And it's really, really, really important. If I say to anybody who's had their children removed, it's very, very easy to start fighting these people. It's very easy to start talking to them with discontempt. It's very easy to get aggressive and angry with them. And as Budapest did, it's very easy to punch the social worker. And if you've seen what's gone on in California, a family's gone in and shot the whole social service. I shouldn't laugh, but I have warned people it was coming to this. I really shouldn't laugh. In fact, I feel really bad for laughing, because this is people's lives, whether they're social workers or not. But they have gone in and pretty much shot the majority of the social workers over there in California. And, we are getting to a point now where parents are wanting to protect their children, a little bit different. But as much as it's your child, it's not like someone coming to repossess your home, which is a scary process in itself. You're dealing with your children, you're dealing with emotions that you've never dealt with before. You know, a lion wants to kill and protect its puppies. So, but parents have been learning the processes. They've been learning that, you know, you're actually told originally, once the original care and placement order is done, that's it. There's nothing you can do about it. But there is appeal processes. There is a revokement of the placement order. There is freeing orders. There is, you know, to oppose the adoption order. None of this has worked in my case, by the way. And it hasn't worked with a lot of others, but we've been able to slow a lot of other cases down. And people have now done a video with a mum called Mickey. She's now getting recontact with her child. The adoption has broken down. She's got another opportunity. But there's a massive case in the papers recently about somebody who had been going through the court processes against them for false allegations. That had taken 3 years, and in that time, the child had been adopted. Now they're going for law change to annul the adoption. So adoptions have been annulled, but it is about not necessarily getting caught up in a lot of the state kidnapping, not becoming fearmongered to it, but actually sitting down, learning the law, understanding the process that you're in, and pretty much play them at their own game. And this is where parents are weighed out once you're in the court process, because everything is against you and you don't know how to respond to what they've done. So if they've done a psychological report on you, well, you go get another one done. But parents don't know you can actually do this. You can go and get independent social workers. But again, it all adds to the employment racket. It all keeps things going while a family is pretty much being broken to pieces and a child is becoming confused. And you don't get over this. You know, we've got another family who's got her son back, and you know, just rebuilding that bond with her child is devastating. He doesn't trust her. He's always worried someone's going to come in and take him. You know, it's created ghoulies under the bed for him. And then ultimately you end up in a situation where these children are becoming adults, or these parents who've had their children taken are losing everything, you know, because once you go into that 26-week court process, if you're in self-employment or if you're working, you've pretty much lost your job. If you're on benefits, you've then had your children's side of that removed. You've had bedroom taxes added onto you. And before that process is even over, you've lost your home. And a lot of parents are now living in fields, in tents. You know, and you don't want to pick yourself back up as well, go into hostels and flats where you haven't got your children. And some people who still do have their properties have got, you know, bedrooms that still got their children's Christmas presents in it. Some people have never taken their Christmas, decorations down because the children were taken at Christmas. You know, the 13th of December, it will be 3 years since Faith and Aaron were taken. People know I tend to have a bit of a kick-off on the 13th of December. There's quite a lot coming this year. But you know, we've had walks for justice. We've had people out there literally finding people on the streets. Sid, you know, walked the UK 3 times, finding people for the independent child abuse inquiry and people who've had children taken. But, you know, there's very vulnerable parents out there who, when they go on the internet, they need to find solutions. You know, they need to know what to actually do once a child has been taken. And there's plenty that can be done. But it does mean you're going to have to get help with paperwork. A lot of parents have dyslexia. A lot of the families are autistic. Some autistic research actually shows that something about 78 families that actually asked for help had their children taken. And it's shown massive amounts of failure within the system. So Cambridge University is doing research, Oxford University is doing research. I'm here in Bristol because of the main people who are involved with the research for adoption. I like to peck their heads on a daily basis. And this is the biggest Masonic area and paedophilia area and the most trafficked sort of area, which is why I keep my face walking around, so the police know me here. You know, we've got to raise this up, but we've got to have solutions coming in. But we need the investigation first, because this has been going on for generations and generations. I mean, this is going right back to the sort of Magdalene. But what people won't know about me is And my mum was 15 when she got pregnant. And I would have been one of the final people that would have gone over to the Magdalene house. But my nan was the first person to get a special guardianship to take me. And then my mum, and she adopted me as well, but my mum was the first person to have an adoption annulled and took me back. But then my dad was the first person to get custody of his child, when he finally had me. So, I'm sort of the right person to do this, but because I'm so controversial about it and because I really push people, they don't tend to like me in a lot of meetings. But Terence did go to the Knights Council meeting. My friend Monique is very involved with United Nations. We've got Sabine in EU. We've got Lucy Allen in Parliament. So there's lots of strong people who are out there now saying, look, this stuff is going on. But, when I first come into this, it was Ian Joseph and John Hemmings, and it was all that you've got to run away, you've got to run away. And I said, well, I can't. I've got 2 older boys who I'm going to be a grandmother in 5 months, who ultimately they can stop me seeing my grandchild as well. We've got to make a stand about this. So what I'd say to any parents who are going through it is you have your own power. And what they do is they bully you into such a way that you feel so worthless. And because you don't understand the emotions that you're going through, it's grief. That you don't get to bury that child. So you have to have some form of acceptance that you will never get that time back. It's gone. But it doesn't mean that you're never going to see your child again, even if it's adults. And when parents get suicidal, I send them a picture of someone hanging themselves, someone cutting their wrist, someone taking an overdose. And I say, which one do you want your child to see in their record? You've got to keep yourself going, even if they're 18, even if they're 30. Or even just now that we've all got to use this to prevent this from happening to other people, because we can sit down and feel sorry for ourselves, or we can get up and say, look, what you're doing is wrong. And we've got to stop this happening to the next generation, because the children that they're taking now, we're not going to see the results of how this has affected them for another 20, 30, 40 years. So we've got to break this cycle. But it isn't going to work being in a rah-rah, hating, anti-way, because there's some great social workers out there. There's some great foster carers, but they're only as good as the system that they work for. But what the police have got to do, and I keep telling the police this, is if a social worker gives you false information that leads to you removing a child, you've got to prosecute them. You've got to hold them accountable. And this is what we've got to do now. There's no legal aid to bring action against them. It's only to defend. So what we're doing is bringing mass amount of people together to learn how to actually take private prosecutions to hold them accountable. Yes, there's common law stuff. I'm not saying it does or it doesn't work. I'm saying that it's missing a section. There's many different avenues. People talk about the birth certificate, and yes, we are a corporate asset, and yes, all this stuff is there, but we need to bring this back down to basics, that this is about communities coming together to help people, so people don't even have to go to social services in the first place. It's not just children being taken. It is the other end of the spectrum as well. I mean, people are being detained in prisons. They're being detained in mental health sectors. People who are of pension age are being taken into care homes, having their homes sold. So it's all sides. But if we come together as communities who do help go down to the shop for someone, who does give the mother a break for a couple of hours on a Saturday so she can do the shopping. But we're in such a fear culture now, especially with, you never know who is the snake in the grass. You never know. You never know who you can trust your children with these days. I've met a lot of amazing parents, but would I necessarily leave my children with all of these parents? No. What I do now down here, I certainly wouldn't necessarily have my children down here with me. But I also would, funny enough, one of the women who's been helping me down here, she has her son down at a homeless, when they sort of do teas and coffees and things. And it only turns out that she's part of the forced adoption community who managed to keep her child. but it's too much now. It really, really is too much, that we do have to now, bring these actions against people, get ourselves out of bed, start looking into what's actually going. Even if you just think of yourself as, okay, there's nothing I can do about my current situation, but what I can do is prevent this happening again. Then you can get that strength. You don't necessarily have to talk about your own case. You can talk about it in third person if you need to. Social media is a great way, but what I would say to people is stop all the damn trolling. We are parents going through this, for God's sake. When you troll us, you troll, our children and the cause as a whole. And it needs to stop being sort of a gossip site. It does need to be constructive. We do need to get together and help someone start asking, what challenge have you got? Is it the paperwork? Sometimes the paperwork's just so damn emotional. You do read things that are true in there. You do have to take some personal responsibility for the things that you have done. It is very difficult to always tell somebody, why you really had a child taken because you're worried of being, judged. But you can only work with the truth. You can only work with, exactly what has happened. And if you have crossed that line, if you have, neglected your child in any way, then, it shouldn't be the last resort. There should be other ways of getting help. And you should be able to go to social services and be brutally honest, even if you have been through some form of abuse. And you do need help. And people do need help. Of course they do. But that shouldn't mean that they have the right to use that, because it's so abusive. To walk into court and have your foster care file thrown in front of you is pretty abusive in its own way. It takes a lot of therapy to do that. But, coming again from all points of view, you're dealing with incompetent social workers. You're dealing with a system that is completely underfunded. You're dealing with the fact that these social workers don't know these families and it's just based on paperwork. And then you're dealing with the employment racket side of it, down to the complete corruption that these people just want to take children. But it's got to come out. And not only that, people have got to start realising that if your next door neighbour's just had a child taken, don't go writing pedo over their windows and smashing their doors off and calling them child abusers, because you actually have no idea what's really going on. And I haven't actually met a child abuser yet. This is the saddest thing about it. I've met people who've been labelled as having learning difficulties. I've met people who've been failed for the medical conditions. I've met people who have been in challenging situations, but nothing that they could have been helped through. I have on the other side of it, obviously, know of other sides that do go on. Children are being taken out of very, very, very abusive situations. But these children are being taken out of home abusive situations and then are being abused in the same foster care system that is meant to be looking after them. And my partner is quite open about the fact that he was taken into foster care. Now, he was lucky. He ran away from his 2 attempts on him. But, again, this is care homers who are abusing children. This shouldn't be happening. So we, the public, are the public inquiry. We don't have to wait for a public inquiry. We are the inquiry. We are the public who can write to MPs and say, look, I've heard about what's going on. I want to know what our MPs are going to do about it, because I'm not going to turn a blind eye and just say, well, it doesn't affect me, therefore I'm not going to do something. Because every person is 3 payments away from dropping onto their asses. It can happen to anybody. It's happened to me, and people who meet me, I don't take drugs, I don't drink, I have a physical condition. People know that I was obviously exposing the paedophilia circle, and I had worldwide media on me prior to it happening. And my gagging prevent me from doing what I was doing. But, it's not, people think that if you've had a child taken, therefore you must be drugs and alcohol. Yeah, so what? Some people are. But you don't judge somebody on drugs and alcohol either, because if you get to the root of that problem, there's usually some form of childhood abuse at the bottom of it, that once you deal with that drugs and alcohol goes away. And the majority of them that you do meet out on the streets who are drug and alcohol, when you talk to them, were ex-foster care children or ex-adopted children. who don't know how to deal with the emotional pain, so therefore they turn to drugs and alcohol. So you can't judge these people for this. No. You've just got to try and understand. But we are not in a compassionate world anymore. We are in an overstanding. We're sitting there in a courtroom with a judge who's looking above us, with social workers who are condemning us, police who are scrutinising us, and the community who are judging us. So I think parents have got enough judgment on them. You know, we'll get judged one day, but by the only person who really can judge us. And karma will, you know, come around. But they said nearly 3 years ago that we would never get as far as we've got now. You know, there's mass amount of stuff, whether it be the paedophilia circle, whether it be the children being removed. There is a massive amount of media on this now. But at the moment now, it really is about healing the parents who've been through it, because they are the witnesses to how this system is destroying these families. Because it doesn't just affect you know, the individuals going through it. I've got a whole community that, you know, go through grief at the same time as I do. And I'm sure when it comes to my baby being born, there'll be pretty much a whole world watching to see, does this baby get taken or not? And I'm certainly going to be videoing a lot of it. But, you know, it affects the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, and it really, really is important now, especially coming up to Christmas. You know, nice little positive message to sort of end it all on, that, you know, families are broken and depleted. We are in Agenda 21. We are in a divide and control sort of world. And we need to come together as families and start helping people. And we've had this week with Dean, where his family have finally had to turn around and go, whoa, hang on a minute. We didn't realise what Dean's been running away from all of this time. And, you know, the family need to sort of come together. But the situation that this makes with me is very vulnerable for the removal of these children. They've got enough on me already. You know, even without my children being removed, they've got enough on me now. Uh-huh. But, you know, it's the way that it's done. It's the contact that doesn't happen. It's the fact that, you know, these people are going to be traumatised for generations and years until they can have a resolution. So this Christmas, you know, if you haven't heard from any of your family for a long time, you know, message them, even the ones who do your editing, because sometimes you just got to try and understand why they're grumpy old drawers and why they do what they do. And, you know, anonymous and messages, we do not forgive, we do not forget. Well, people know I run quite wide with all of that, but I do forgive and I do forget. And, you know, we do need to heal. We have a right to heal. And we have a right to speak to the people who've hurt us. And we have a right to hold them accountable. But that starts, there's going to be so many people this Christmas who are isolated and lonely. And by having this community of people, or having someone like myself who's out there and moving it forward, gives people hope. And we need a bit more than hope this year. You know, we need some real faith. You know, create Facebooks for your children so they can find them. You know, put messages out there that you want to get in contact with people. There's a lot of people as well who were in foster care or adopted, and, you know, they've been told that they were abused when actually they weren't. It's just what the paperwork says. So it's time for people to, you know, use the freedoms request, find out what paperwork is on them, and God forbid they're ever in this situation, they'll be ready, because you've got a responsibility when you have your child to protect your child. And we are in a world now where they are sexualising children through the music. You know, there's paedophilia stuff in the media all the time. Campaigners have got a responsibility not to fearmonger the community about what's going on, because there's polarity. For every bad situation, there's good as well. You know, we live in a beautiful world. You know, we have the chance of having an amazing system where people and communities do help people. But the only way we're going to do that is when we actually start working towards the solution. So we're saying, yes, you know, this is traumatizing. This is horrendous what is happening. But we've got to be able to repair the system this way and this way. If we constantly keep attacking it and putting fire on it, we're actually just creating more children to be taken, because parents will feel that this problem is so big that they can't do anything about it. Therefore, they're not even going to attempt to stand up in court, because it just can't be won. So it's about saying it can be. It's about learning the processes. It's about communicating, not having the breakdown of the relationship with social services, about using the complaints procedures, about accepting that you are in this process now. There's nothing you can do about it. Now you're jumping out of the plane. You're either going to land safely or you're going to crash. So if you focus on the crash, you're going to get the crash. If you focus on landing safely, you might get a bit of a bump, but hopefully there's enough people around you to help you. And this is pretty much what I'm trying to build at the moment. People have a go at me about fundraising, but at the end of the day, I don't get paid to do it, and I'm not entitled to benefits. I'm not entitled to social housing, and I can't go into private rental. So I'm pretty much out here in the car finding as many families. But obviously now I'm pregnant, things are a bit different. I've got about until I'm 32 weeks before social services can start poking their noses around me. So hopefully I'll pull a magic hat, rabbit out of the hat and sort it out in some way. But, people do need to be helping out, even if it's just being there to be on the phone to a mother or a father, who's saying, this is really hard, or just remember today may be the date that somebody had a child removed and they're going to be a bit upset because you can't talk to people about it. It's difficult. You cry daily. People think I'm so strong, but I cry daily. I have breakdowns sometimes in the morning, sometimes at the night. Sometimes I can see a child walking down the street. Mine happens daily. Even in the library, I just have to go into the toilets and, crouch down on the floor and break down crying for a bit. So, but it's good. It's good. It's only if you don't do that do you get caught in alcohol and drugs and things like that. Yeah.
Sorry, Kelly. I'm just wanted to let you know there's an awful lot of people with supported comments in the chat room, but we have got one question, if I could put it to you and just ask for your reaction. It's a question from Unique Lee. He said, is a modern trust/hospital becoming too dangerous to have a childbirth? Considering the noise, the methods, the aftercare, the invasive nature of other so-called services, is there a solution here that has not been explored, such as more safe home births, water chambers, etc.?
Well, funny enough, I was looking at a private GP myself today, and the other thing is if you actually do have home births, I'm sorry to tell you, you're actually deemed as irresponsible and children are being taken. There's a high amount of people having home births that are having children taken purely for that reason. There is massive problems with the NHS, massive problems. And I mean, one of the things that's really, really important is that what they have now is multiple agencies. So there's like MASH meetings. And it works with both of these sides of the communities, but they're losing funding in exactly the same way. But to ask about the privatisation of it or the way it's running, I wouldn't be the right person to know all the ins and outs of that. So I wouldn't want to give anyone any answers that were completely wrong or in a different direction. But one of the main things is then there needs to be an overhaul of every system. Yeah. Every system that's going on, every system that's going on. But with the NHS, one of my friends was waiting in a waiting room. She didn't even have a delivery suite because there were so many babies coming in. And that puts everybody in a vulnerable sort of situation anyway. But I don't know. I don't know in terms of some of the questions he was sort of asking in terms of, the trust and all this sort of stuff. But I'm nervous. One thing I haven't done, I've been quite public about the fact that I'm pregnant, but going over to the actual GP and registering with the fact that I'm pregnant worries the hell out of me because I will have to give birth in a hospital because of the condition that I have. But that power's then taken away from me. I can't get out of that hospital with my baby once that baby's born. I'm trapped. I am going to have to deal with all of the authorities and all of the systems that come in around me. Ideally, I would go and have a home birth and keep everything safe and keep these people out of it. But you can't, because even to register your child, you've got to have a midwife and a doctor who gives you that letter, And if you think, oh, well, I won't register my child, well, then you can't get a birth certificate, a passport, so therefore you're never going to get out of the country with your child. So the system has you pretty trapped, because even once your child's born, you've then got your midwife, and then you're in the education system, and every single one of those people have more authority over your child than you. This is the maddest thing about it. Even if you think you do, you actually don't. But it's also an illusion that they don't either. But, you know, anyone can do anything, from the hospital down to the midwives, all the way through it. The fact that the moment you're registered to come in and have that baby, they have a legal duty to respond immediately to the social workers. And it's all this system that all work together. And ultimately it's your life and their job. But it wouldn't make any difference whether it was NHS or private as well, because I know people in the private sector, the majority of them are ending back out on the NHS. So, and I did think, if I went to a private doctor, is this going to protect me? Is it going to be a bit more elite than the NHS? Am I not going to have as many of the delays and problems? Are things going to be dealt with a lot quicker and things like that? But this is what I'm saying. The whole system is all so below the threshold. So this is where we're dealing with tort law, because, you know, you could have one issue at the hospital, and that repercusses to something else. You know, even if you've just been ill, or, you know, your baby's born and a doctor turns around and says, oh, your child's got jaundice. Well, you know, did you not eat right? Do you know what I mean? There's loads of different things that they can do. Yeah. I'm sorry it doesn't answer it directly, because he came out with words that I don't know about. But in that scale of it, this is the big problem. More parents who are pulling themselves out of the system are facing more control coming around them than if they actually went to the doctors and to the hospitals. I'd love to see more home births. I'd love nothing more than, you know, to have a really natural birth for this baby, you know, but ultimately I need a midwife, because I've never given birth to it. I've never brought a baby into the world, and I'd love to know that if something goes wrong, because I hemorrhaged with my son, that I've got all of the correct medical care around me. That's where I do trust the NHS. Yeah. And I know that, you know, if my birth goes wrong, then the NHS is there, and there's specialists and doctors who saved my life and given me a transfusion before, who I'm internally grateful for. But again, for every negative situation, someone's got a positive one. And I'm sure there's some amazing stories of people who've got the right help and come through the system and things like that. You know, people whose lives have been saved by the NHS. But this is why we've got to not just focus on the problem, but this is about bringing a problem forward until people accept it's a problem. Then we can't move to the solutions. So they've got to accept that this is a problem.
Yeah, that absolutely fabulous. That you've given us a lot of information on a subject which I would imagine must be quite difficult for you to talk about, Kellie. I'd like to say a really big thank you for coming and talking to us and trying to get your Skype sorted out, but sadly we had to call you on your mobile, so that the line was a bit dodgy, but I'm sure everyone got the message. I've just got a little message for you from commonly known as Mark in the chat room. He says he met Kellie at Wake Up Liverpool. What a lady. Awesome she is. And I'd like to echo that.
Thank you.
And I'd like, on behalf of Enemy Within and everyone at People's Internet Radio, to wish you all the luck with your birth of your baby, and I hope everything goes according to your plans, not theirs.
Well, tell everybody I'll be calling a crew to come in if they come near this hospital when I have this baby. I've probably got about 7 months, but I want scalers on the roof, protesters out the front, a crew around my baby. Bring the bloody media and we'll bring a fight on, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, Kellie, and best of luck in the future. We're going to play a little recording here that Vin's put up today, and then we're going to have one of Mickey's tunes, and then we'll hopefully be back with Stephen Spy and Nigel O Mara. So back in a few minutes, folks.
At your property.
But what I'm saying is, if you effectively use a brand new company.
We're not a brand new company. We're Gas Networks Ireland. We're the networks for all the suppliers.
But But if there was sorry, just explain to me why you can't use the other name that was there.
We were known as Bord Gáis Networks, and we changed our name on the 1st of December last year to Gas Networks Ireland. The reason why, Bord Gáis Energy, the supplier, was sold, and when it was sold, they sold the Bord Gáis name as well. So this is why we couldn't use Bord Gáis in ours anymore. So we're Gas Networks Ireland now. We're the same company.
That's very strange. That sounds
just a change of name.
That doesn't sound...
If you like, I can send out a letter in regards to this. The meter at your property, we own it. It's over 20 years by the date of manufacture, and we need to get it upgraded, basically. I can send out a letter.
Are you looking for my permission to do this?
No, I'm looking to make an appointment with you for the work to be done. It's a half an hour of a job. They take out the meter that's there, the new one goes in the same position, and then they do a safety check on the internal appliances.
So you're not looking for my permission to do this, is that what you're saying, though?
I'm looking to make an appointment with you, because somebody needs to be there when we do the safety check after changing over the meters.
I know, but I'm asking you a very specific question about permission.
Well, it has to be done at some stage, so we're looking for...
That's not quite answering my question, though. I'm asking you, are you asking for my specific permission to do this?
It's not asking for permission. I'm just wondering if we could arrange an appointment together that could suit for us to exchange the meter. As I said, it's our property. We own that meter, and because it's over 20 years, it has to be upgraded.
That may be the case, but this is my property here.
If you don't want to make an appointment, that's fine, but what I'm saying is...
I haven't said that either. What I'm actually said is I'm trying to get clarification on you, and you're avoiding answering the question whether you're seeking permission to do this or not.
I'm sorry. I'm not avoiding the question.
Well, you haven't responded appropriately to it.
I'm trying to make an appointment with you for the work to go ahead.
So I'm asking you, are you therefore, to make your appointment, are you seeking my permission? Either you are or you aren't. I mean, it's a simple question.
To take it. I want to make an appointment with you for the work to go ahead on a day that would suit you.
I mean, the reason I'm asking this is because there's all of this talk that's going on a bit with water meters and gas meters and all of this stuff. I'm finding it very confusing, you see. So I'm looking for a very specific answer to that question. In other words, do you require my permission to do this?
Well, see, the thing about it...
In your opinion?
It is, whatever way you want to pick it up. I'm asking you, can we make an appointment for the work to go ahead on a day that would suit you? The meter will have to be upgraded at some stage. Now, we have nothing to do with water meters.
No, that's not necessarily true. I mean, I could just decide to use a different fuel source. So, that's why I'm asking you. I mean, it's a very specific question I'm asking you. I have very good reason for asking.
Yeah, it's up to you. If you don't want it to go ahead, that's fine.
I see.
We will have to do it at some stage. This work will have to be done at some stage. If you don't want to make the appointment with me right now, that is actually fine. But I'll send out a letter, and you can get back to us in a later stage if you wish.
Well, I'm still a bit confused about the details with this apparent name change. So I'll have to do some investigating on that until I'm happy with that. I'd say until I've investigated and worked out exactly what's what. I'd say let's leave everything as it stands at present.
Yep, and I'll send out the letter. Thank you.
Thank you.
And welcome back to Enemy Within on peoplesinternetradio.com, where we are seeking solutions. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to get Stephen Spy on just yet. I will keep trying throughout the programme. But Nigel, I believe you've got plenty you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, I've certainly got plenty to say, Steve. Andy, sorry.
Steve, Andy, Chris, Tony.
Anything you like.
Yeah, as long as it's not late for breakfast.
I suppose first of all I should tell people who I am. My name's Nigel O Mara. I've spent the last 30 years working with victims of sexual abuse. I set up the first helpline in the country for male survivors in 1986. And since then, really, I've bbeen looking forward to an inquiry. So that's taken a little while.
You can say that again.
I knew about a lot of these things back in the day.
Uh-huh.
I listened to the calls on the helpline during those years when we couldn't do anything about it, really. We couldn't make any impression because the way that the law was and the way that sexual abuse victims were treated at the time meant that basically we were just listening to people and not being able to do anything. Obviously, we've come a long way since then. 30 years have passed, and now we're coming up to the Goddard Inquiry. Now, the Goddard Inquiry is going to be something that's going to affect a lot of people, but I also think it's going to open a lot of people's eyes. One of the things I took away from a meeting we had with the Goddard Inquiry just a couple of months ago was that they are not only looking for who did what. They're not only looking for who the actual perpetrators were, they're looking at how the system was used to continue to abuse people, who knew things and didn't do anything, who knew things and just stayed quiet, and also who knew things and just profited from it. And I think that's going to be something that's going to make a big difference to this inquiry. I think the Goddard inquiry is committed to try and actually bring this stuff into the open. And that can only be a good thing after all the years of silence that we've had.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people saying, yeah, we've got this Goddard inquiry, but isn't it just going to be another cover-up given Goddard's pedigree and the fact that I believe she's a Knight of Malta, isn't she? So part of the in-crowd, most definitely.
Well, I've always been of the opinion that the first thing you do is, if you don't put into an inquiry, it's not possible to get anything out.
No, yeah.
You know, it's just not possible. So if you do put in and nothing happens, at least you've tried. At least you've done something towards it. At least you've tried to bring it out into the open. Whereas if you don't engage with that inquiry, if you don't put into it, there's no way it can possibly work. And then you can't really complain if you don't get another one.
Yeah.
So my feeling on it all is that you really have to say you're putting in to be able to expect something out of an inquiry like this.
Yeah, I would say that's a good comment there. Yeah. So, how do you see this moving forward, Nigel? Or have you got any information that you can give us that's perhaps not so widely known?
Well, what we're doing at the moment is there are 12 areas that have been specified by Goddard to start this inquiry off. So if you like, what we're doing back behind the stage, as it were, is we're collating information. We're getting information from whistleblowers, copying that information, getting it ready to go to the barristers. So if people do have information from previous either work in any form of the care field or other information that would be useful to the inquiry, now's the time to start thinking about getting it ready to put into the inquiry. Now the barristers are asking for that information, like Mansfield Chambers, who are working for us, are asking for that information so that they can be ready and prepared to present evidence to the inquiry. So really it's now got to the stage where we really are gearing up for getting the inquiry on its feet.
Yeah.
We're expecting sometime during the summer of 2016 for these truth projects. Some of them are truth projects, and some of them are inquiries to start getting going, and for a lot more evidence to be taken. Some places, one or two, they have already started taking some of this evidence. So it's important that people do prepare if they have got information to put in. Mm-hmm. And if somebody hasn't registered yet an interest to put into the inquiry, I would urgently suggest they contact the inquiry's website and at least register their interest, just to say that they do want to say something, so that the inquiry knows how many people it needs to cater for when it does come here, and in all the other places, of course.
So you say the Truth Project, is that something like the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions that they held in South Africa in the post-apartheid era?
Yeah, very much. What it is they're about giving survivors and interested parties an opportunity to put their opinion across in an open and non-judgmental manner. So nobody's going to question them about these things. It's not an interrogation of any kind. It's just a chance for anyone to be able to put across what they feel has happened within their experience, either as a survivor or as a whistleblower, or somebody who watched things going on that they didn't feel comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And that's really giving them the ability to do that and the space to do that. That's the idea of it. I can't say that these things are going to work, because I don't know. But what I can say is that unless we try them, we're never going to know they're going to work or not.
Absolutely. Something has just popped into my head that Mandy said to me today when we were around sampling her lovely hospitality. She did say, could I bring up the fact that it's not just survivors that we want coming forward, although we do want survivors coming forward. She said it's very important that if anyone saw or witnessed anything, even though it didn't directly affect them, then their testimony can be very important and can perhaps corroborate someone else's story who hasn't got any corroborating evidence at the minute.
Yeah, what it does is it fills in what we call timelines. For every survivor, we try and build up a timeline to work out where they were, when they were, in different places.
Yeah.
And sometimes that memory can be a bit confused, especially for people who've suffered traumas. So the importance of these timelines is other people can give corroborating evidence that they were in those homes. Because very often we're turning around to authorities and saying, we want to make a complaint about the treatment in this place. And they're literally turning around and saying, you weren't ever there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've no evidence to prove it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need just that little bit of evidence. Some other child who was in a home and saw something going on that was wrong. They can come forward and put that evidence forward so that it can all be taken together. And if it does prove to be substantial and to make a difference to a police case, then that evidence, the inquiry is committed to passing that evidence to the right people in the police to make sure that there is action taken on it. They do have their own investigating team for that.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's like a jigsaw puzzle, really, isn't it? You can keep putting pieces to it, but there's certain key pieces that at a certain point when you add those pieces, it makes the whole picture become clear. And someone might have a very small piece of information or witness testimony that perhaps they don't think is all that terribly important, but it might be one of those vital missing pieces that helps make sense of the whole picture.
That's right, and it fills in these little gaps in the timeline, and corroborates when people say they were places that they were there, and that they were seen there by other people. It makes I know it makes gives a great deal of comfort to survivors when some of this sort of information comes forward, because it means that they feel vindicated, that they feel that somebody actually saw it, somebody actually remembers it. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just my thought. Because these are things that survivors do worry about.
Well, I think at some point or other, all of us throughout our life have been, at one point or another, falsely accused of doing something that they didn't actually do. And I know from personal experience what a relief it is when someone says, oh, hang on, I saw that, or I witnessed that, or I've got a diary that says so-and-so.
Exactly the same way.
And it's exactly the same thing, obviously on a different scale. But
yeah, but it's just as important. It's so important for survivors to have that little bit of corroboration, have that little bit of knowledge that somebody else noticed, somebody else saw, and it does make it a lot easier for survivors to come forward, knowing that we're looking for those links, that we're looking for how these things connect, and that the inquiry is too. That is something again that I was impressed by the inquiry when they came and spoke to us about this. I thought the way that they handled it, the way that they seemed to be approaching what they were doing was great. I can only hope that it will continue like that. I can't say it will, but I can't say it won't. So I can only hope that it will continue like that. Until then, you have to also deal with the other things. I run a hostel for male survivors, here in Nottingham.
Yeah.
And a counselling service. And these are the things that, again, people don't see. They don't see them in the background. They see the bit of publicity that gets put on the internet or whatever, and what they don't see is the endless hours speaking to people, the counselling service, the hostel service, They don't see all the working behind the scenes to get all of these papers together, to collate all these information, make various complaints to police, to councils, to MPs, making representations to Parliament. These are all things that take time and are all very important. What we really need to bear in mind is that it's not just about the inquiry. It's also about the support services that are needed to go alongside it. Every one of these survivors who comes forward, and Judge Goddard is expecting to take testimony from at least 10,000, because she reckons that 1% are going to actually produce evidence. So that gives you an idea of the scale that she's thinking of. Every one of them is going to need support, because when you relive something like that, by going over this information time and again, in that situation, it causes a short-term difficulty, and I think quite naturally. It causes a short-term difficulty where people need to feel secure, and they need to feel that they've got the support necessary to deal with the feelings that they have when they're giving testimony. It's a very important part. And at the moment, I don't think, certainly not in Nottingham, but I don't think in many places they're actually geared up to deal with the emotions of people that are going to come out during the inquiry.
No, because it is a very emotive subject, and well, just by its very nature, I mean, you think they'd have some kind of contingencies in place for the fact that this is, you know, it's a life-destroying situation, and people are going to get...
Oh, I try and avoid the word life-destroying, because my life hasn't been destroyed.
Sorry.
It's certainly been changed. Yeah. It's certainly life-changing.
Yeah.
I like to think that my life has had some use apart from that. But it is life-changing, and it does make it different and some things more difficult. I find it especially difficult, for example, to work for somebody, because I can't stand somebody having power over me, having the power to sack me. I don't think that's all to do with the abuse, but I think it's certainly got a part of it. Whereas I find people trying to control me in any way offensive, and I tend to rebel against it. So it's made it very difficult for me to look at career options and things like that. I don't work very well in a company or a team.
No.
I work much better on my own. I was a truck driver for 17 years for that reason. Because you're your own boss when you're out there.
Well, it used to be great till they got mobile phones in the cab, didn't it? And then you've got the gaffer sat next to you 24/7, which kind of defeats the object of being out there in the truck on your own, doesn't it? That's the way I looked at it anyway.
It's got an off switch.
Yeah. Yes, unfortunately, the gaffers used to get pretty annoyed if you turned your phone off. But no, I did that the same. I was 20 years or so a truck driver, and I loved the freedom and the fact that you were given a piece of paper with an address on it, and you went there and then called them up when you finished to get your next job. But then all of a sudden it went from that to, if you're stuck in traffic, the phone's ringing every 5 minutes and the gaffer's there. Where are you? Where are you? Was before you got there when you got there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And supermarkets with these just-in-time deliveries are an absolute nuisance. And I mean, the time deliveries are illegal anyway, but basically it was a result of my experience there and going self-employed for a while after that. I would class myself as totally unemployable anyway, because I'm like you. I don't enjoy people telling me what to do, and when they start trying to lord it over me, I'll just tell them to go get stuffed. Or
yeah, absolutely. I've done that so many times.
Yeah, it was the good old days when you could walk out of one job on a Friday and have another one lined up before you
Before you even got out the gate.
Yeah, or have another one lined up before you went to the pub Friday night, ready for Monday morning. But sadly, things aren't that good these days. But yeah.
Talking about yesterday, Andy,
Yeah.
we as you know, we went to Nottingham County Council to have a word with the police scrutiny committee.
Yes, I've heard little bits.
One of the things that I brought up with both Paddy Tipping, who's the Police and Crimes Commissioner, and Chris Ayres, who's the Chief Constable, was the fact that just last week, this is happening now, just last week, a girl of 9 who had been abused had her evidence lost by the police in 2015. They were using videotapes. Can you believe that our police force here in Nottingham is so archaic that they are still using videotapes and they are still able to lose that sort of evidence? It is incredible with the amount of publicity about child abuse and about protecting evidence in these cases that they can just continue to lose evidence in this way.
Well, to be honest, Nigel, if you'd have asked me that question 5 years ago, I'd have said, that'd be ridiculous. Of course, police wouldn't. But now, having spoken to people like yourself, Mickey, Kelly, and so many others, I'm sure it happens all the time. And it's an absolute bloody disgrace and should be a cause for outrage.
Now, this was in the Post, our local newspaper, on Friday evening, with the parents being very upset about their child not getting justice, quite naturally, in my view.
Yeah.
I would have thought that the Chief Constable or the Police and Crimes Commissioner, at least one of them, would have known on Monday at that committee meeting that this had happened.
Yeah.
But when I questioned them both, they told me, both of them, on camera, that this was the first they had heard of it. It was in their local paper on Friday about a police failing, and the Police and Crimes Commissioner and the Chief Constable responsible, neither of them knew about it.
Well, I have seen that picture of Paddy Tipping with his Pinocchio nose, so perhaps that's why.
Yes, that was, I think that was during the question.
Yeah, Mandy certainly got him cornered there.
Yeah, we don't take great, well, some of us do, but we don't take great delight in just cornering people, for the fun of it. There is a serious side to it. Every time we're doing it, there is a serious side because it means that we haven't been listened to.
No.
And we haven't been taken notice of. And the fact is that unless these people do start taking notice of survivors and their representatives, which, according to their own regulations and their own scrutiny committee's agenda, they have a special responsibility to do. It's actually written that they have a special responsibility to contact survivors' organisations and to maintain contact with them. And they're just not doing it. They're not keeping survivors informed of what's happening. They're closing down their cases by when they're saying maybe all the perpetrators are dead and they can't take any further action. That's fine, but you've got to tell people that in the right way. You don't just dump the information on them and then not leave them with any support service, which is what's been happening.
Yeah.
So I can understand, as I'm sure anyone else can, that if all the perpetrators are dead and there's no realistic prospect of a prosecution, that you can't take any further action.
No. I
think everyone can understand that. But it's the way that you give that information over and the support that you give with it that's important. Yeah. And at the moment, that's where there really, really are grave failings. The police don't know how to speak to people as victims. They are used to treating people as the perpetrators.
Yeah.
And they find it very hard to communicate with people on another level. because that's not the way they're trained. It's not the thing that they're taught to deal with.
Yeah, well, you say they're used to treating people as suspects or perpetrators. If they've even ever spoke to him, which I'm pretty sure they have, I wonder if they displayed such contempt to Greville Janner. Because it seems like he's, from what I've seen in the press this last week, move along, nothing to, he's too sick. In spite of the fact he's been passing laws and claiming his £300 a day from the House of Lords and all this crazy stuff, he's too ill to stand trial.
Anyone who ever thought that Greville Janner would stand trial was living in cloud cuckoo land.
He's too high up.
Way too high up.
Yeah.
We're not going to be given the big fish. It's also been made clear by the inquiry, like I said, that they're not just about hunting down perpetrators. They're about hunting down systematic failures, systematic loopholes, systematic systems where people were allowed to continue abuse, where people were allowed to propagate a scenario of abuse and continue abusing in circles.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they're about finding. They're not really about finding just individual people. And I think anyone who expects any really high-level prosecutions to come out of this inquiry, I think that, like I said, they're living in cloud cuckoo land. And I've been dealing with this for 30 years. It's not something I say lightly. I don't think that was ever the intention. I think anybody who is seriously implicated will get some kind of disease fairly quickly and not be fit for trial. Yeah, I mean, there's even things going around now saying that Tony Blair is starting to get dementia. I wonder why that is. Is that not because of his possible implication in the Iraq war?
Sorry, did you ever look into his eyes? I think he's been demented for a bloody long time.
Yeah, but
Tony Blair, as I prefer to call him.
But on a serious point, I think the inquiry, like I said, it is something that we need to be able to say that we've tried to engage with it. Because if we don't try and engage with it, we're going to be looking at the possibility that it would just be said, well, okay, we tried to find out, but we couldn't find anything, so it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got to...
You're feeding their narrative that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
If we don't engage with this inquiry. I find it heart-wrenching that some people in the survivor community have pulled out of the inquiry, because I think it's the only chance we've got. I think it's the only chance we're going to have in my lifetime, at least, to be able to actually finally put this thing to rest and to try and get some kind of proper safeguarding procedures for the future, which will include safeguarding procedures for parents as well as for children, so that, again, your things like your forced adoptions, etc., which were mentioned earlier, those sort of situations also become very much more difficult if you've got a proper structure of child protection procedures.
I'm with you. Yeah. So, going back to what Mandy said again earlier, the bits of it keep coming back to me as we're talking. She did say that you need to be finding some people to come and stay in your hostel.
Yeah, well, I have spaces in my hostel for anyone who's got a housing problem and is a male survivor and is looking for some support. Then the hostel is there for those people. It's the first of its type in the UK, specifically to set up a safe haven, as it were, where people can feel free to talk about things that are affecting them without feeling judged by other people around them. I think it's an important service for the people who need it. I don't think it's going to be one of these massive mushrooming services that go out all over the country, etc. I think it's something that's going to be needed on a short-term basis. because we do have a problem here in Nottingham, with a lot of, survivors in homeless situations, who aren't getting the support that they need.
Mm-hmm.
So I set up this hostel, mainly as a result of what I heard John Mann say, in January when I was speaking in Parliament. And he spoke after me in Parliament, and he was saying that this was a problem in the Nottingham area. I was also getting reports from David Hollis from the Nottingham CSA group that this was a problem in the Nottingham area. And so I've set up this hostel. It's new. It's just started.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do have vacancies, and if anyone knows of anyone that needs that sort of support, I'll be happy for them to contact me. They can do that in several ways. They can do it on Twitter at EM Survivors. They can do it on my Facebook page, facebook.com/EM Survivors. And on that page you can find a phone number or an email address to contact me on.
I'm with you. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I'll put those links on the podcast when we put that up later on. Yeah, we've got another, 15 minutes left?
15 minutes.
Yeah. Have you got any more you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I think what we need to do is with regards to the care system. The care system needs to change greatly. At the moment, like your previous contributor said, it's been run as a company, and this has been happening for a long time. And this means that when it's being run as a company making profits, it means that the essence of what was supposedly, there's a reason it's called social work. It's supposed to be fitting in with society. It's not doing that at the moment, and it's not doing that in various different ways. Although I'm a child abuse campaigner, all of these things, these things do come into it. It's not everyone that is the same, but through all of the care system, there are so many times when there are so-called administrative decisions made. I went to see somebody a few months ago who asked me to be an advocate for their children, because they were claimed to be at risk of abuse. So I did a full safeguarding interview with the children, and I could see no cause for concern whatsoever. Now, I went to the meeting, for the conference meeting, as a child's advocate, but we hadn't told the social workers that that's what we were doing. When we got there, there was somebody there who they said was the child's advocate. And I said, no. The child's advocate, for one, has to at least speak to the children, surely. This child's advocate had not even spoken to the children and was prepared to go into a meeting and make decisions that would affect those children's lives without asking them any question whatsoever. Now, I don't think it takes a genius to work out that that's wrong. Yeah, we're dealing with some of the most important decisions made in a child's life. It could be the difference between them being abused and not being abused. Yeah. And if anyone thinks that going into the care system means you don't get abused, sorry, but they've got to get their head together. Yeah. There is research going back to the 60s on this, that more people as a percentage are abused within the care system than outside the care system. Yeah. More people end up in prison, end up going through prison and for being homeless from inside the care system when they leave than others brought up outside the care system. So if the care system isn't working, and if it's in fact more dangerous that the young people are going to be abused within the care system, then we shouldn't be putting them within the care system. We should be doing everything we can to keep them out of that care system. And I think that that's true anyway. We should be doing everything we can to keep children out of the care system, because it's not a fit place for young people to be brought up.
No.
If it was, then the figures speak for themselves. These things wouldn't be happening.
Well, I mean, there's so many things that have kind of cropped up as I've been looking into this. I mean, like social workers who own adoption agencies. Sorry, shouldn't that be ruled out as a conflict of interest? But apparently no.
You would have thought so, wouldn't you?
You know, and,
although that if they are independent social workers who have then set up an adoption organisation, they could be very bona fide.
Yeah.
Yeah. People don't only get a social worker's qualification through the care system. Not everybody who gets a social worker's qualification works in the care system. Some of them do run private services. Some very good, some not so good. As in all cases, you're going to get some who don't run it very well, and you're going to get some who run it excellently.
Yeah, we've got Sarah who does a show a month with us on health matters, and she was a child counsellor. She worked within the system, but she found that she wasn't really helping children. So she removed herself from the system and now works privately. And I hear people speaking very highly of the service that she provides, which is something she wouldn't be able to do within the system. So, yeah, there are good people who do these things privately. Perhaps some of them need to be taken a bit closer look at, or maybe the links that they got with the system and the removal of the children need to be investigated a bit more.
Well, that's what I think. I think it's a case of the needs of the children needs to be investigated more. I think that putting anyone to try and act as an advocate for somebody, no matter whether they're a child or not, without actually meeting with them and speaking to them, is absolutely ludicrous, and just cannot be right in any circumstance. There has to be that communication. There has to be somebody making a proper assessment of those children's needs before making a decision to take them away from their parents.
Yeah.
So I think on that score, the care system certainly got a lot to answer for.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, do you see any obvious ways, apart from the blindingly obvious, or ways that seem obvious to you as someone with a bit of an insight, as ways things could be improved without making terribly massive changes? Or do you think the whole system needs to be kind of demolished and built afresh?
Well, I think a lot of it is about taking down the systems that exist, which keep people and allow these administrative decisions. I don't see how you can make an administrative decision on a child's life. It's just not right. It's just not right. It has to be properly investigated. And this is the problem. These people don't have the time. They don't have the resources. With the best will in the world, they can't do this.
No. Because
they're being prevented from doing it by just the system and the way it works. It works against not only the child and the family, but it also works against the social workers and the people out there who are trying to do their best. And let's be honest about this. A lot of people who are out there working as social workers do a lot of good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do a lot of caring for children. It's not all bad. As in everything. You get some good, you get some bad.
So, we've got about 6 minutes left now. So, have you got any links or information you'd like to give out in that last 6 minutes, please, Nigel?
Yeah, if anyone wants to link up to my Facebook page, it's facebook.com/EMSurvivors, SURVIVORS. Also, there's my Twitter address, which is @EMSurvivors, same spelling, which makes it nice and easy. If anyone wants to contact Mickey or the Nottingham group, they've also got a Facebook page, Nottingham CSA Inquiry Action Group. feel free to join in there and chat with us. And then if anyone wants any information regarding the inquiry, or if they want any information regarding getting in contact with the inquiry or for counselling support, it doesn't matter where you are, I'll try and help you and find it. Then please feel free to contact me on any of those pages.
That's brilliant, Nigel. Thank you very much. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that Mickey said he wanted mentioning. I know Fragz have got a load of things he wanted to go into, but I haven't got a list of those right now. So I guess we need to just give a bit of a shout out for Graham Hart, who's on after us at 9 p.m. And I'm not sure who Graham's got on tonight, but he usually has some top guests, and hopefully we'll get some great information out of Graham. Hope he's fighting fit and back with us. And then at 11 p.m. we'll be followed by the Amash Files with Joanne Summerscales, and Joanne has some interesting guests on there with the contactees and abductees. Quite a different ball game from most of the rest of the stuff we talk about on PIR, but certainly it's a subject that interests me, and I hope many of you will stay and listen and take on board what Joanne's talking about. But I'd like to just now say a big thank you to Kellie Cottam, who joined us for the first hour, and wow, can't she talk? I was thinking I'm going to get a question in a minute. No, Kellie, that was absolutely.
I saw you lean forward a couple of times.
She knew what she got to say, and more power to her. You know, she's a lady
absolutely.
who knows what she wants, and I really admire her and the stand that she's taken. And big thank you to Mickey, who I've spent the day with today, and thank you to Mandy for the sandwiches and coffee. And also big thank you to yourself, Nigel, for joining us tonight. And we've got a couple of songs to play out with, one from yourself and one from Mickey to go first. So I'll bid everybody good night, and we should be back Friday at the same time. And I believe Friday we've got Fragz and David Gazy, and we'll be having a bit of a sideways look at the United Nations. Maybe a bit lighter than some of our usual subjects, but it should be good fun. So join us then. Thank you very much, Nigel, and we'll get you back on again soon, I'm sure, mate.
Thank you very much, Andy. It's been great to be on tonight, and thanks very much everybody who's been listening, and for Kellie.
Thanks everybody in the chat room for all your great inputs, and we'll leave you with Roscoe Shelton, You're the Dream, and that will be followed by Nigel's Choice. So thanks everyone. Good night.